Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, your peaceful corner of the world where every night ends with comfort, calm, and gentle dreams. Tonight, you're invited to leave the busy world behind. Let your thoughts grow quiet, your breathing become slow and steady, and allow this peaceful story to guide you toward a night of deep, restful sleep. Whether you're listening from a cozy bedroom, relaxing on a quiet evening, or simply searching for a moment of peace after a long day, I'm truly happy you're here. So, make yourself comfortable. Dim the lights if you can, settle beneath a warm blanket, and let every gentle word help your body relax a little more with each passing moment. Before we begin, if you enjoy relaxing bedtime stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Deep Sleep Stories and turn on notifications so you'll never miss another peaceful journey into dreamland. Now, take one slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Again, a slow, peaceful breath in and slowly let it go. Feel the tension leaving your shoulders. Relax your face, relax your arms, relax your legs. There is nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to do. For the next few hours, your only job is to listen, relax, and drift peacefully toward sleep. Tonight's story is called The 200-Year-Old Magic Tree. Long before busy cities, noisy roads, and glowing lights filled the world, there was a quiet forest where time seemed to move more slowly. Hidden deep within rolling hills stood an ancient tree, unlike any other. For more than 200 years, it had quietly watched the changing seasons, welcomed countless travelers, sheltered gentle woodland creatures, and guarded a secret that only the wind seemed to understand. No one knew exactly where its magic came from. Some believed it was a gift from the stars. Others whispered that the moon itself had blessed the tree long ago. But everyone who rested beneath its great branches left with the same feeling: a peaceful heart, a quiet mind, and the gentlest sleep they had experienced in years. So, close your eyes, take one more slow, calming breath, and let us begin our journey into the quiet forest, where the oldest magic in the world is not found in spells, but in kindness, patience, and the peaceful passing of time. Chapter 1. The Forest Where Time Whispered. As the first light of dawn slowly stretched across the horizon, the forest awakened in perfect silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace. A cool morning breeze drifted gently through the towering trees, carrying the sweet scent of pine, wild flowers, and fresh earth after the night's gentle dew. Golden rays of sunlight slipped carefully between countless emerald leaves, painting soft patterns across the quiet forest floor. Tiny birds welcomed the new day with delicate songs. A family of rabbits emerged from their burrow, carefully exploring the grass, still covered with sparkling drops of morning dew. Nearby, a small stream flowed gently over smooth stones, creating a soothing melody that had never changed for hundreds of years. Everything felt calm. Everything felt safe. Everything moved at its own peaceful rhythm. Hidden deep within this ancient woodland stood the oldest tree anyone had ever seen. Its enormous trunk was wider than the walls of a small cottage. Its roots reached deep into the earth, as though they embraced the very heart of the forest itself. Its branches stretched high into the morning sky, providing shelter for countless birds, squirrels, butterflies, and tiny woodland creatures. The forest simply knew it as the magic tree. No sign marked its place. No map revealed its location. Those who discovered it often said they hadn't found the tree at all. Instead, The tree had somehow found them. For nearly 200 years it had remained exactly where nature had placed it. Storms had come. Storms had gone. Heavy snow had covered every branch. Spring had returned with blossoms once again. Generations of animals had been born beneath its shade. Children had grown into grandparents. Travelers had rested against its warm bark before quietly continuing their journeys. The old tree had watched every single moment, and yet it had never spoken. At least, not in the way people usually understood. Its language belonged to the wind. Whenever the evening breeze danced through its leaves, a soft whisper filled the forest. Some believed they could almost hear gentle words hidden inside the rustling branches. Others believed it was only their imagination. But every person agreed on one thing. Standing beneath the old tree brought an extraordinary feeling of peace. The kind of peace that made worries seem smaller. The kind of peace that encouraged tired hearts to slow down. The kind of peace that gently invited sleep. This quiet morning seemed no different. High above, white clouds floated lazily across a brilliant blue sky. A pair of robins carefully built a new nest among the tree's oldest branches. A curious squirrel searched for acorns hidden long ago beneath soft moss. Bright butterflies drifted from flower to flower without the slightest hurry. Even the wind seemed to move more slowly here. The ancient tree welcomed every living creature without asking for anything in return. It offered cool shade during summer, protection during storms, a place to rest during long journeys, and quiet comfort whenever someone needed hope. If trees could smile, perhaps this one always had. No one noticed the tiny golden leaf resting near the highest branch. It looked different from every other leaf, while the others shimmered green beneath the sunlight. This single leaf glowed with a warm golden light, not bright enough to surprise anyone, only enough to seem quietly magical. It had remained there for many years, waiting, patiently, as though it already knew something the rest of the forest did not. Far beyond the hills, where quiet forests slowly gave way to winding country roads, someone had begun a journey, a traveler, walking alone, step by peaceful step. Without realizing it, every path ahead was leading toward the ancient tree. And somewhere deep within the forest, the old magic tree seemed ready to welcome its next unforgettable story. Chapter 2. The Traveler Who Had Forgotten How to Rest. The morning sun climbed a little higher into the clear blue sky, filling the forest with a warm golden glow. The air smelled of fresh pine needles, soft moss, and wild lavender growing beside the quiet stream. Everything in the forest seemed perfectly content. The birds sang without rushing. The butterflies floated from flower to flower without a destination. Even the clouds drifted slowly, as if they had nowhere else to be. It was the kind of peaceful morning that reminded the world there was no need to hurry. Many miles away, a traveler walked along a narrow country path. His name was Oliver. He was neither young nor old, just an ordinary man with kind eyes and a gentle heart. Across one shoulder hung a small leather satchel that carried only a few simple belongings: a loaf of bread, a small bottle of water, a warm wool blanket, and a worn journal whose pages were nearly full. Oliver had spent many years traveling from village to village. He had crossed quiet rivers on wooden bridges. He had climbed gentle hills where the wind carried the scent of blooming flowers. He had watched countless sunsets disappear behind distant mountains. Yet despite all his travels, he had forgotten something very important. He had forgotten how to truly rest. Every evening he promised himself that tomorrow he would slow down. Tomorrow he would sit beneath a tree. Tomorrow he would watch the clouds. Tomorrow he would simply breathe. But tomorrow always became another long walk, another destination, another road stretching toward the horizon. Without realizing it, Oliver had become so busy searching for beautiful places that he rarely stopped to enjoy the beauty surrounding him. On this particular morning, the path beneath his boots felt different. It became softer, cooler, covered with a blanket of green moss instead of dry dust. The songs of distant birds grew clearer with every step. A gentle breeze brushed against his face, carrying a fragrance unlike anything he had ever smelled. Fresh rain, wildflowers, ancient wood, and something else, something peaceful that was impossible to describe. Oliver paused for the first time that day. He closed his eyes. He took one long, slow breath. For reasons he could not explain, his shoulders relaxed. The weight he had carried for so long suddenly felt lighter. Without thinking, he smiled. "This place feels different," he whispered softly. The forest answered only with the quiet rustling of leaves. He continued walking, not because he was in a hurry, but because something deep inside his heart gently encouraged him to keep going. The narrow trail curved between tall oak trees and graceful pines. Sunlight shimmered through the branches like golden ribbons dancing in the air. Small rabbits watched him from a safe distance before quietly returning to their breakfast. A family of deer lifted their heads for only a moment before peacefully grazing once again. None of the animals seemed frightened. Instead, they simply accepted him as another gentle visitor passing through their peaceful home. After nearly an hour of slow walking, Oliver heard the soft sound of flowing water. Following the melody, he discovered a crystal-clear stream. Its water moved so gently that every smooth stone beneath the surface could be seen. He knelt beside the stream and dipped his hands into the cool water. It was refreshing, calm, almost comforting. As he looked into the water, he noticed something unusual. Reflected on its surface was the outline of an enormous tree standing farther ahead. It was unlike any tree he had ever seen. Its branches reached gracefully toward the sky. Its trunk looked strong enough to have stood through countless storms. Its leaves shimmered gently in the morning sunlight. Oliver slowly stood, his heart filled with quiet curiosity. Without speaking another word, he followed the peaceful path toward the great tree. With every step, the sounds of the outside world seemed to fade. His thoughts became quieter. His breathing slowed naturally. The worries that had followed him for years felt farther away than ever before. It was as though the forest itself was gently reminding him of something he had almost forgotten. That sometimes the greatest journey is not the one measured in miles. It is the journey toward peace. And waiting quietly beneath the wide, welcoming branches of the ancient magic tree. A new chapter of Oliver's life was about to begin. Chapter 3. Beneath the ancient branches. Oliver continued along the quiet woodland path, his footsteps growing slower with each passing moment. He no longer felt the need to hurry. For the first time in many years, the road ahead did not seem more important than the place where he already stood. The forest invited him to notice every small detail: a tiny ladybug resting on a fern, a feather drifting gently through the air, the soft rustle of leaves dancing together in the morning breeze. Somewhere nearby, a woodpecker tapped patiently against the trunk of an old pine tree. The sound echoed gently through the forest like the steady rhythm of a peaceful clock. Tap, tap, tap. Nothing about the forest asked for attention, yet everything quietly deserved it. Oliver smiled to himself. He realized he could not remember the last time he had truly listened, not to voices, not to busy streets, but to nature itself. The farther he walked, the cooler the air became. The sunlight softened as it filtered through the thick green canopy overhead. The path beneath his boots turned into a carpet of soft moss that felt almost like walking across velvet. Then he saw it. Standing proudly in the very heart of the forest was the great magic tree. It was even more magnificent than its reflection in the stream had suggested. Its trunk was enormous, marked with deep lines that told the silent story of 200 years. Every groove in the bark seemed to hold a memory. Every branch stretched gracefully toward the sky, as though embracing the sun itself. Thousands upon thousands of emerald leaves shimmered gently in the breeze, creating a quiet melody unlike anything Oliver had ever heard. It was not music, yet somehow it felt like one. Without realizing why, Oliver removed his hat. He simply stood there, quietly, respectfully, as though greeting an old friend he had somehow known his entire life. The forest seemed to pause with him. A squirrel climbed slowly down one of the branches and watched with curious eyes. A pair of bluebirds landed nearby, singing only the softest of songs. Even the wind became gentler. Oliver stepped closer. He carefully placed one hand against the ancient bark. The tree felt warm, not from the sunlight, but from something deeper, something alive. He closed his eyes. For a long moment he said nothing. The quiet wrapped around him like a warm blanket. His breathing slowed. The tightness in his shoulders disappeared. His heartbeat became calm and steady. It felt as though the worries he had carried for years were gently drifting away, like autumn leaves floating upon a peaceful stream. A single golden leaf loosened from one of the highest branches. It twirled gracefully through the air, round and round, slowly, patiently, until it landed softly beside Oliver's feet. He picked it up with great care. Unlike every other leaf on the tree, this one shimmered with a faint golden glow. It was beautiful, simple, perfect. Oliver smiled. "What a wonderful gift," he whispered. The breeze answered by gently moving through the branches above. The leaves rustled together with a soft, comforting sound. For just a brief moment, it almost sounded as if the old tree were whispering, "Welcome." Oliver looked around. There was no one there, only the forest, only the wind, only peace. He did not question what he had heard. Instead, he tucked the golden leaf safely inside the pages of his old journal. Some memories, he thought, deserved to be protected. He spread his small wool blanket beneath the wide branches of the magic tree and sat down. Above him, sunlight filtered through thousands of leaves, creating moving patterns of gold and green upon the ground. A gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers across the clearing. The nearby stream continued its endless, peaceful song. Oliver leaned back against the great trunk. He let out one long, contented breath. For the first time in countless years, he was not thinking about where he would go next. He was simply grateful to be exactly where he was. High above, hidden among the oldest branches, the mysterious golden leaf that had remained untouched for generations was no longer there. It had chosen its traveler. and though Oliver did not yet know it, his quiet meeting with the ancient magic tree was only the beginning of a remarkable journey, one that would gently change not only his life, but also the lives of many others who would one day find their way to this peaceful forest. Chapter 4. The Tree That Listened. The forest slowly settled into the gentle rhythm of the afternoon. Sunlight drifted lazily through the branches, moving like liquid gold across the forest floor. Shadows stretched and softened as the day passed, never in a rush, never in a hurry. Oliver remained seated beneath the magic tree. Time for him no longer felt like something that needed to be chased. Instead, it felt like something that could simply be experienced. He rested his back against the ancient trunk. It was solid and warm, as if the tree itself was quietly holding him up, not just physically, but in a deeper, unseen way. For a long while, he said nothing. There was no need for words. The forest seemed to understand silence better than speech. A gentle breeze passed through the leaves above him. The sound was soft and rhythmic, like distant waves touching a quiet shore. Oliver closed his eyes again, not because he was tired, but because for the first time in a long time, he felt safe enough to rest without fear of what he might miss. His thoughts began to slow. The endless list of places he had not yet visited faded away. The unfinished tasks in his mind grew distant and unimportant. Even the weight of yesterday seemed lighter here. It was as if the forest was gently teaching him something he had forgotten long ago. That rest is not wasted time. It is a return to balance. Above him, the magic tree stood still and patient. Its branches did not move quickly. They never had. Instead, they swayed gently with the wind, as though they were breathing with the world itself. Birds came and went without hesitation. A small nest hidden in the upper branches held tiny sleeping hatchlings, safe and undisturbed. The tree did not demand anything from them. It only gave shade, protection, stillness, peace. Oliver opened his eyes slowly and looked up. "Why does this place feel so different?" he whispered. Of course, there was no answer in words, but the forest responded in its own quiet language. A soft rustle of leaves, a distant bird call, the gentle movement of light across the ground, and somehow that was enough. He reached into his journal and opened it carefully. The pages were filled with sketches, notes, and memories from his long journey. Mountains he had climbed, villages he had passed through, rivers he had crossed at sunrise. He turned the pages slowly, one by one. Then he stopped. The golden leaf he had found earlier was still there, resting between two pages. It had not changed, yet it felt different now, warmer, more alive, as if it carried something invisible within it. Oliver studied it for a long time. Then, without thinking, he placed his palm gently over it. A strange calmness spread through his chest. Not excitement, not confusion, just peace. Deep, steady peace. The kind that does not come from understanding something, but from simply accepting it. A few moments passed. Then something unexpected happened. Very softly. So softly that it almost felt like imagination. He heard a voice, not from outside, not from the forest, but from within the stillness around him. It was not loud, it was not sharp, it was calm, warm, ancient. "You have come far," the voice seemed to say. Oliver's eyes opened slightly, but he did not move. He was not afraid. Somehow fear did not exist in this place. The voice did not continue in words. Instead it became feeling, a sense of being understood, a sense of being seen without judgment. Oliver exhaled slowly. "I think I understand," he whispered, though he was not entirely sure what he understood. The wind passed through the branches again. A few golden leaves drifted down, spinning slowly through the air before settling gently on the ground. The forest did not rush them. Nothing here ever rushed. Oliver leaned back once more against the magic tree, and for the first time since he could remember, he allowed himself to do something very simple. He rested, not with worry in the background, not with thoughts of tomorrow. Just rest, the kind that reaches deep into the body and gently tells the mind, "You are safe now." Above him, the ancient tree remained still. But if one had listened closely enough, they might have noticed something subtle in the wind. Not a sound, not a word, but a quiet acknowledgement, as if the forest itself had just welcomed him home. Chapter 5. The Keeper of Quiet. Mornings. Oliver did not realize when he had fallen asleep. It was not the kind of sleep that comes after great exhaustion. It was gentle, natural, peaceful, like drifting upon a calm lake beneath a sky filled with soft white clouds. The afternoon slowly melted into evening. The golden sunlight faded into warm shades of amber and rose. The forest grew quieter, but it never became silent. There was always something to hear. The cheerful song of a robin returning to its nest, the whisper of leaves dancing together high above, the distant murmur of the little stream that had flowed through the forest for longer than anyone could remember. Oliver opened his eyes slowly. For a brief moment, he forgot where he was. Then he looked upward. The great branches of the magic tree stretched across the evening sky like the welcoming arms of an old friend. A peaceful smile appeared upon his face. "I haven't slept like that in years," he whispered. He stood carefully, brushing a few tiny leaves from his coat. To his surprise, he felt lighter. Not because his satchel weighed less, but because something inside him had changed. The worries that had followed him from town to town no longer felt so heavy. The future no longer seemed so urgent. For the first time in a very long while, he simply enjoyed being alive. A gentle breeze drifted across the clearing. The leaves above him shimmered softly in the fading light. One by one, tiny birds settled into their nests. The forest was preparing for another peaceful night. As Oliver quietly looked around, he noticed something unusual. Not far from the ancient tree stood a small wooden bench. It looked very old. Its wood had turned silver with age, yet it remained strong and carefully cared for. He was certain it had not been there earlier. Curious, he walked toward it. Resting upon the bench was a tiny clay lantern. Beside it lay a folded piece of parchment. Oliver picked it up carefully. The paper was old but perfectly preserved. Written in neat, flowing handwriting were only a few simple words. "Leave this forest more peaceful than you found it." There was no signature, no explanation, only those gentle words. Oliver read them once, then again. The message felt strangely familiar, not because he had seen it before, but because it echoed something his own heart had always believed. He folded the parchment carefully and returned it to the bench, exactly where he had found it. Some gifts, he thought, belonged to everyone who visited this place. The evening sky slowly deepened into shades of violet and deep blue. The first stars began appearing above the treetops. Their quiet light shimmered between the branches like tiny lanterns hanging in the heavens. Oliver decided to remain for the night. He gathered a few fallen branches, not from living trees, but only those already resting upon the forest floor. With great care, he built a very small campfire inside an old circle of smooth stones. Its gentle flames flickered softly, offering warmth without disturbing the peaceful forest. He warmed a little bread. He drank cool water from the nearby stream. Then he simply sat, watching the stars appear one by one. The night carried no loneliness, only quiet companionship. The forest seemed alive with peaceful hearts. A family of deer rested near the edge of the clearing. An owl watched silently from one of the highest branches. Fireflies floated lazily through the evening air, glowing like tiny golden stars that had drifted down from the sky. Oliver smiled. So this is what peace feels like. The words disappeared into the cool night breeze. Above him, the ancient magic tree stood exactly as it had for 200 years, watching, protecting, listening, without asking for anything in return. As midnight quietly approached, the moon rose high above the forest. Silver light covered every leaf, every stone, every blade of grass. The clearing glowed with gentle beauty. Then, without warning, a single golden leaf slowly floated from the highest branch of the magic tree. It drifted silently through the moonlight, not toward Oliver, but toward the narrow forest path beyond the clearing, as if it were quietly inviting someone else to find their way home. Far away, beyond the hills and rivers, another traveler had just begun walking beneath the same moon. And though neither of them knew it yet, their paths were slowly, patiently, and wonderfully becoming one. Chapter 6. A Lantern in the Moonlight. The night grew deeper, but the forest never felt dark. Moonlight poured gently through the branches of the ancient magic tree, covering the clearing with a soft silver glow. The tiny campfire had faded into warm, glowing embers. Its gentle warmth blended with the cool evening air, creating a feeling of perfect comfort. Oliver sat quietly on the old wooden bench. His journal rested beside him, unopened. For once he felt no need to write. Some moments, he realized, were too beautiful to be captured with words. They simply needed to be lived. Above him, countless stars sparkled across the endless sky. They seemed brighter here than anywhere he had ever traveled. Perhaps it was because the forest was free from the lights and noise of distant towns. Or perhaps the forest had its own quiet magic. A cool breeze drifted through the clearing. The leaves of the magic tree rustled softly. Their gentle whisper sounded almost like a lullaby carried by the wind. Oliver closed his eyes and listened, not trying to understand, only listening. The forest spoke without language. The stream spoke without words. Even silence seemed to have its own gentle voice. Time passed peacefully. Minutes became hours. Yet Oliver never once reached for his pocket watch. For the first time in many years, time no longer mattered. Then, a tiny light appeared between the trees. It was so small that Oliver first mistook it for a firefly. But this light did not drift with the breeze. It moved slowly along the forest path. Steady, patient, growing a little brighter with every passing moment. Oliver stood quietly. There was no fear in his heart, only curiosity. Soon the little light revealed itself. It came from an old brass lantern carried by a woman wrapped in a long gray cloak. She walked with calm, unhurried steps, as though she had followed this path many times before. Her silver hair shimmered beneath the moonlight. Her eyes were gentle and kind. When she reached the clearing, she smiled warmly. "Good evening," she said softly. Her voice was calm, like the quiet stream nearby. Oliver returned the smile. "Good evening. I hope I'm not disturbing your peaceful night." "Not at all," Oliver replied. "In fact, I don't think anything could disturb the peace of this place." The woman looked up at the ancient magic tree. "It has that effect on people." Oliver noticed something surprising. She did not seem amazed by the enormous tree. She greeted it almost as one greets an old friend. "You've been here before," Oliver said gently. She nodded. "Many times. My grandfather brought me here when I was only a little girl. He told me that whenever life became too heavy, I should return to the oldest tree in the forest." Oliver listened quietly. He believed the tree never solved anyone's problems. She smiled. It simply reminded people that their hearts already knew the answers. The breeze carried another gentle whisper through the leaves. Oliver found himself smiling again. "I think I'm beginning to understand." The woman carefully placed her lantern beside the wooden bench. Its warm golden light blended beautifully with the silver glow of the moon. Together, they illuminated the clearing with a peaceful warmth. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply listened. To the breeze, to the stream, to the quiet breathing of the forest. Finally, the woman looked toward Oliver. "May I tell you a story?" Oliver nodded. "I would like that very much." She folded her hands in her lap and gazed up into the branches above. "When I was 7 years old, my grandfather brought me here during a terrible storm. I was frightened. I believed the thunder would never end. He placed his hand upon this very tree and asked me to listen. At first I heard only rain. Then I heard the wind. And after a while, I heard something much quieter." Oliver leaned forward slightly. "What was it?" She smiled softly. "My own heartbeat. It was calm, even while the storm raged around us. My grandfather told me that the strongest trees are not the ones that fight every storm. They are the ones that know how to bend gently with the wind." Oliver looked up at the wide branches swaying peacefully overhead. The old woman's words settled gently within his heart. He realized that for many years, he had spent his life fighting every storm, every worry, every uncertainty. Perhaps true strength was something much quieter. Perhaps it looked more like this ancient tree, standing patiently, giving freely, and trusting that every season, no matter how difficult, would eventually pass. The moon climbed higher into the sky. The forest remained wrapped in peaceful silence. And beneath the sheltering branches of the 200-year-old magic tree, two travelers sat together without hurry, sharing nothing more than stories and the gentle comfort of simply being present. Chapter 7. The Story. Hidden in the rings of wood. The night remained wonderfully still. Above the forest, the stars shimmered like tiny lanterns scattered across a velvet sky. A soft breeze wandered through the branches of the magic tree, carrying the fresh scent of pine, wildflowers, and cool earth after sunset. Oliver and the kind old woman sat quietly beneath the enormous branches. Neither of them felt the need to hurry the conversation. Silence, they discovered, could be just as comforting as words. The woman looked toward the ancient trunk, her eyes filled with quiet admiration. "My grandfather once told me something about this tree," she said softly. Oliver turned to her with gentle curiosity. "What did he say?" She smiled. "He told me that if trees could write books, this one would hold the longest story ever written. Oliver looked at the thick trunk. Its bark was marked with deep lines and gentle curves, each one shaped by countless seasons. The rings inside this tree, the woman continued, hold 200 years of memories. They remember every spring blossom, every summer sunrise, every autumn leaf, and every peaceful winter snowfall. Oliver imagined those invisible rings hidden beneath the bark, each one representing another year, another season, another quiet chapter in the tree's extraordinary life. The thought filled him with wonder. 200 years, he whispered. So many lives. So many stories. The woman nodded, and yet the tree has never rushed through a single one. A tiny owl landed silently on one of the lower branches. It tilted its head for a moment before settling comfortably among the leaves. The old woman smiled. Even the animals trust this place. Oliver noticed something he had overlooked before. There were no broken branches lying beneath the tree. No signs of struggle. Everything felt cared for, almost as if the forest itself gently protected its oldest friend. "Do you believe the tree is truly magical?" Oliver asked. The woman thought for a long moment before answering. "I think people often misunderstand magic." Oliver listened carefully. They imagine bright lights. They imagine impossible things. But perhaps, she looked up toward the moonlit branches, the greatest magic is much quieter. Oliver waited. The ability to bring peace to a worried heart. The ability to remind someone to slow down. The ability to help a stranger feel at home. She smiled gently. "If that isn't magic, I don't know what is." The breeze whispered once again through the leaves. This time it sounded almost like quiet applause. Far above, the branches swayed peacefully beneath the moonlight. Oliver rested his hand against the warm bark once more. The tree felt exactly as it had before. Strong, patient, comforting. He closed his eyes for a single peaceful breath, and suddenly a memory appeared. Not a magical vision, not a dream, simply a memory he had not thought about in years. He saw himself as a little boy, running through the countryside near his childhood home, laughing beside his father, climbing a small apple tree, watching clouds drift across a bright blue sky. He remembered how slowly the days had once passed, how carefully he had once noticed butterflies, clouds, birdsong. He smiled, somewhere along the road of growing older. He had forgotten how to notice small, beautiful things. A single tear quietly rolled down his cheek, not from sadness, but from gratitude. He gently wiped it away. The old woman noticed but said nothing. Some moments deserved silence. The forest understood that better than anyone. Minutes passed peacefully. The little owl closed its eyes. The fireflies floated lazily above the grass like tiny golden stars. The stream continued singing its endless lullaby. Then somewhere in the distance, a bell rang, just once, soft, gentle, almost carried by the wind itself. Oliver opened his eyes. "Did you hear that?" The woman nodded with a knowing smile. "Yes. What is it?" She looked toward the deeper part of the forest. "Every midnight, the old chapel beyond the hills rings its bell. It has done so for longer than anyone can remember." Oliver listened. The sound faded gently into the peaceful night. For reasons he could not explain, it made him feel hopeful, not because something exciting was about to happen, but because it reminded him that somewhere, beyond every quiet forest, beyond every winding path, someone else was also ending their day in peace. The woman slowly stood and picked up her lantern. "I should be going now," she said softly. Oliver stood beside her. "Will I see you again?" She smiled warmly. "If the forest wishes." She lifted the lantern, its gentle golden light dancing across the path ahead. Before taking her first step, she looked back one final time. "Remember, Oliver, the road will always be there tomorrow. But this peaceful moment exists only tonight." With those gentle words, she disappeared slowly between the moonlit trees. Her lantern grew smaller and smaller, until it became nothing more than a tiny golden star in the darkness. Oliver remained beneath the magic tree, looking upward, listening to the whispering leaves, holding those simple words close to his heart, and somewhere high above, hidden among the oldest branches, the ancient tree seemed to smile in the only way it knew, by quietly watching over another peaceful soul. The morning of golden dew, the night passed gently, like a quiet melody fading into silence. The stars slowly disappeared, one by one, as the eastern sky began to glow with the soft colors of a new dawn. Deep shades of blue gave way to gentle lavender. Lavender slowly welcomed warm shades of pink. Soon the first golden rays of the morning sun reached across the sleeping forest. A cool breeze carried the fresh scent of pine, damp earth, and blooming wild flowers. Tiny drops of dew rested upon every blade of grass. They sparkled like thousands of tiny diamonds beneath the growing light. Oliver opened his eyes slowly. For a few peaceful moments, he remained exactly where he was, resting beneath the wide branches of the magic tree. Somewhere nearby, a robin greeted the morning with a cheerful song. A family of squirrels chased one another playfully through the branches overhead. The little stream continued its endless journey, flowing just as peacefully as it had yesterday. Everything felt wonderfully familiar, and yet everything somehow felt new. Oliver smiled. Perhaps it was not the forest that had changed. Perhaps it was him. He folded his blanket carefully and placed it inside his satchel. Before leaving, he rested one hand against the great trunk. "Good morning, old friend," he whispered. The leaves above him rustled softly. The breeze answered in the only language the tree had ever known. It almost sounded like, "Good morning." Oliver laughed quietly. Whether it was imagination or something more, he did not know. And for the first time in many years, he realized he did not need every mystery to have an answer. Some mysteries were meant to be enjoyed, not solved. As he began walking toward the stream, something unusual caught his eye. Tiny golden droplets shimmered on the grass surrounding the magic tree. At first he thought they were ordinary drops of morning dew reflecting the sunlight. But when he looked more closely, each tiny drop seemed to glow with a warm, golden light. They sparkled gently before slowly fading back into clear water. The sight lasted only a few moments. Then it was gone. The forest looked perfectly ordinary once again. Oliver smiled. It seems this forest enjoys keeping its little secrets. He knelt beside the stream to wash his face. The cool water refreshed him completely. As he looked into its clear surface, he noticed his reflection. His face was the same. His clothes were the same. Yet something in his eyes had changed. The constant tiredness he had carried for years had quietly disappeared. In its place was calm, not excitement, not endless happiness, simply peace. Nearby, a young deer stepped carefully toward the water. It paused only a few feet away from Oliver. For a long moment, neither moved, neither felt afraid. The deer lowered its head and drank peacefully from the stream. Oliver watched with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he whispered. The little deer lifted its head for a moment, as though acknowledging the greeting. Then with quiet grace, it disappeared once more into the trees. Oliver stood and looked back toward the magic tree. Sunlight now poured through its branches, making every leaf shimmer with brilliant shades of green and gold. It looked magnificent, strong, timeless, patient. He suddenly understood why travelers returned here year after year. Not because the forest promised adventure, not because it offered treasure, but because it reminded people of something they often forgot, that life did not always have to be rushed, that happiness could be found in birdsong, in cool water, in morning sunlight, in the simple act of breathing deeply beneath an ancient tree. As Oliver prepared to continue his journey, he reached into his satchel for his journal. He opened it to the page where the golden leaf rested. Something unexpected had appeared. Beneath the leaf, in beautiful handwriting that had not been there before, were just 5 simple words. "Return whenever your heart grows tired." Oliver stared quietly at the page. He had written nothing. No one else had touched the journal. Yet the words were there. Neat, peaceful, almost glowing in the morning light. He smiled without surprise. Somehow, it felt exactly right. He gently closed the journal and placed it back inside his satchel. Then, after one last grateful look at the ancient magic tree, he took a slow step toward the forest path. He did not know where the road would lead next. But this time, he carried something far more valuable than a destination. He carried peace, and somewhere high above, the oldest tree in the forest watched him disappear between the sunlit pines, patiently waiting for the next weary traveler who needed to remember how to rest. Chapter 9. The Little Girl Who Followed a Blue Butterfly. Several peaceful days passed. The forest welcomed each sunrise with the same quiet grace it had shown for 200 years. Morning mist drifted gently between the ancient trees before slowly disappearing beneath the warm embrace of the rising sun. The little stream continued its endless song. The birds greeted each new dawn with cheerful melodies, and the great magic tree stood patiently in the center of it all, as calm and welcoming as ever. Oliver had continued his journey, but he never wandered far from the forest. Instead of rushing from village to village, he now traveled slowly. Sometimes he spent an entire afternoon sitting beside a river. Sometimes he paused simply to watch clouds drifting across the sky. He smiled more often, he breathed more deeply, and every evening, before closing his eyes, he gently touched the golden leaf resting safely inside his journal. It reminded him that peace was never truly lost. It simply waited to be remembered. One bright spring morning, another traveler entered the forest. This visitor was very different from Oliver. She was only 8 years old. Emma lived with her grandparents in a small cottage, surrounded by wildflowers, only a few miles from the edge of the forest. She loved collecting smooth stones from streams, and she believed every forest held at least one wonderful secret. Her grandmother often smiled and said, "If you walk quietly enough, nature will always tell you a story." Emma never forgot those words. A beautiful blue butterfly appeared before her. Its wings shimmered in the sunlight like pieces of the summer sky. It circled gently around her head, once, twice, then floated slowly toward the forest. Emma laughed softly. "Are you inviting me to follow you?" The butterfly continued fluttering ahead, never moving too quickly. It seemed to pause every few moments, as if making sure Emma was still behind. Curious, she followed. The forest welcomed her with birdsong and cool, fragrant air. Sunlight danced between the branches. Everything felt safe. The butterfly continued leading her deeper into the woodland, across little wooden bridges, past carpets of emerald moss, beside the quiet stream whose water sparkled beneath the morning sun. Emma had never walked this far before, yet she felt no fear, only wonder. Finally, the butterfly rose gracefully into the air and circled above a tree unlike any Emma had ever seen. She stopped in amazement. The enormous trunk reached toward the heavens. Thousands of emerald leaves shimmered softly in the breeze. The air beneath the tree felt cooler, quieter, almost magical. The blue butterfly landed gently upon one of the lowest branches. Then, after resting for a moment, it flew away into the bright morning sky. Emma smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. She did not know why she said it. It simply felt right. She stepped closer to the ancient tree. Its bark was rough beneath her fingertips. She leaned gently against the trunk and closed her eyes. Immediately, she felt something she had never felt before. Not excitement, not surprise, just a deep, peaceful happiness, the kind that filled her heart without needing any reason at all. A tiny robin landed beside her. Instead of flying away, it simply watched her with curious little eyes. Emma laughed quietly. "I think this tree likes visitors." The robin chirped once, almost as if it agreed. High above, the leaves rustled softly in the morning breeze. The familiar whisper drifted through the clearing, gentle, comforting, timeless. "I'll come back," she promised. "I want to hear all your stories." At that very moment, far away along a quiet country road, Oliver paused beneath another old oak tree. Without knowing why, he smiled toward the distant forest. Somewhere deep in his heart, he felt that the magic tree had just welcomed another friend, and the ancient tree, standing quietly in the heart of the forest, continued doing what it had done for 200 peaceful years, offering comfort, sharing silence, and gently reminding every visitor that the most extraordinary magic in the world could often be found in the quietest moments. Chapter 10. The Garden of Wildflowers. The days drifted by as gently as clouds across a summer sky. Nothing in the forest hurried. Morning always arrived with quiet grace. Evening always departed with peaceful silence. And the ancient magic tree continued its quiet watch, just as it had done for 200 remarkable years. Its branches welcomed the sunrise. Its roots embraced the earth below. Its leaves whispered softly whenever the wind wandered through the forest. Every creature seemed to know that this was a place of kindness, a place where no one needed to feel alone. Emma returned the very next morning. She carried a small woven basket that was almost empty. Inside rested only a tiny bottle of water, a warm biscuit wrapped in cloth, and a little notebook with a blue ribbon tied around it. She smiled as soon as she saw the great tree standing peacefully in the morning light. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. The leaves above answered with their familiar whisper. Emma giggled. "I'll pretend you said good morning back." She spread a little blanket beneath the wide branches and opened her notebook. The first page was blank. She carefully picked up a pencil. Then she wrote, "Today I visited the oldest tree I have ever seen. She paused, looking around the peaceful clearing. A pair of rabbits quietly nibbled fresh clover nearby. Bluebirds fluttered between the branches. The stream sparkled like liquid glass beneath the sunlight. Emma continued writing. This tree doesn't speak with words. It speaks with quiet. She smiled. That felt exactly right. Later that morning, while walking around the enormous roots, Emma noticed something growing nearby. Tiny wildflowers, hundreds of them. White, yellow, purple, blue. They surrounded the magic tree like a colorful blanket. Some flowers were no larger than the tip of her finger. Others swayed gently on long green stems. Butterflies drifted lazily from blossom to blossom. Busy little bees hummed peacefully as they gathered nectar. Emma knelt carefully. They're beautiful. She knew better than to pick them. Instead, she simply admired them where they belonged. Her grandmother had always taught her, the prettiest flowers are the ones left for everyone to enjoy. Emma decided to do something different. She gathered a few tiny stones from the nearby stream. Carefully, she placed them around the edge of the little flower garden. Not to keep anyone out, only to remind visitors to step gently. By lunchtime, she had created a small winding path through the flowers. It was just wide enough for someone to walk without crushing a single blossom. She stepped back and smiled proudly. There. Now everyone can enjoy them. The breeze stirred gently through the clearing. The leaves of the magic tree shimmered softly above her. If trees could smile, perhaps this one did. That afternoon, an elderly couple wandered into the forest. Their walking sticks tapped softly against the moss-covered path. They looked pleasantly surprised when they discovered the ancient tree. "Oh, my," the old gentleman whispered. "I've never seen anything quite like this." His wife noticed the tiny stone path winding around the wildflowers. How thoughtful. She smiled warmly. Someone has cared for this place. Emma quietly watched from beneath the branches. She felt happy, not because anyone praised her, but because the flowers remained safe. The elderly couple sat together beneath the tree for a long while. They spoke very little. Sometimes they simply watched the clouds drifting overhead. Sometimes they listened to birds singing among the branches. When they finally stood to leave, the gentleman gently touched the tree's bark. "I feel younger somehow." His wife laughed softly. "So do I." They disappeared slowly along the woodland path, walking hand in hand. Emma smiled. The forest had shared its quiet gift once again. As the afternoon faded toward evening, golden sunlight bathed the clearing in warm light. Every flower glowed softly. Every leaf shimmered like polished emerald. Emma packed her little basket. Before leaving, she opened her notebook one last time. On a fresh page, she wrote, "Today, I learned that kindness can be very small. Sometimes kindness is simply protecting a flower that someone else has not yet discovered." She closed the notebook gently. Then she rested one hand against the great trunk. "Thank you." The familiar whisper answered from above. Soft, patient, peaceful. Emma waved as she began walking home. "I'll see you tomorrow." The forest watched her disappear between the trees. The butterflies continued their gentle dance among the blossoms. The little stream sang its endless lullaby. And the 200-year-old magic tree stood quietly beneath the evening sky, watching over the tiny garden of wildflowers, knowing that even the smallest acts of kindness could grow into something beautiful for generations to come. Chapter 11. The Rain That Brought Peace. The following morning arrived wrapped in soft gray clouds. The sun remained hidden behind a gentle blanket of mist, and the forest welcomed the quieter light with perfect calm. The air felt cool against the leaves. A peaceful breeze wandered through the trees, carrying the fresh scent of moss, cedar, and damp earth. Far above, a single raindrop landed upon one of the highest leaves of the magic tree, then another, and another. Soon, a light rain began to fall. Not a storm, not heavy rain, only a gentle shower that seemed to whisper rather than splash. The forest loved this kind of rain. The wildflowers lifted their colorful petals toward the sky. The ferns shimmered with tiny silver droplets. The little stream smiled with fresh water flowing into its quiet current. Emma had almost reached the edge of the forest when the rain began. She paused beneath a tall pine tree and looked toward the distant clearing. Instead of turning back toward home, she smiled. I think the forest wants a rainy day today. Pulling the hood of her little cloak over her head, she continued walking slowly. The rain never hurried, neither did she. When Emma reached the magic tree, she discovered something wonderful. The enormous branches formed a natural shelter. Only a few tiny drops reached the soft ground beneath them. The ancient tree had quietly protected countless travelers from gentle rains for 200 years. Today was no different. Emma sat beneath its great branches, listening carefully. Raindrops tapped softly upon thousands of green leaves. Tap, tap, tap. Together, they created the most peaceful music she had ever heard. She closed her eyes. There was something magical about listening to rain while remaining warm and dry beneath the ancient tree. Every breath felt slower, every heartbeat softer. Nearby, two little rabbits hurried beneath the shelter of the wide roots. They shook the rain gently from their fur before curling up beside one another. A family of sparrows tucked themselves safely beneath thick branches overhead. Even the butterflies found quiet places to rest until the rain would pass. The forest knew exactly what to do. No one panicked. No one rushed. Nature simply accepted the rain as another beautiful part of the day. Emma smiled as she watched the peaceful scene. My grandmother always says rain helps everything grow. She reached into her basket and removed a small piece of bread. Carefully, she crumbled a few tiny pieces onto a flat stone for the birds. Within moments, a curious robin fluttered down. Then another. Soon, several tiny birds shared the simple meal together. Emma watched quietly. She never moved too quickly. She never tried to touch them. She simply enjoyed their company. High above, the leaves of the magic tree rustled gently. The soft rain seemed to blend perfectly with their whispering song. It was impossible to tell where the sound of falling rain ended and where the voice of the forest began. The hours drifted peacefully by. The rain became lighter, then lighter still. Finally, the clouds slowly began to part. A single ray of sunlight slipped through the branches. It landed upon one tiny raindrop hanging from a leaf. Suddenly, the clearing filled with sparkling light. Thousands of tiny droplets reflected the sunshine like countless little diamonds. Every flower glowed. Every blade of grass shimmered. The entire forest looked as though it had been gently dusted with stars. Emma gasped softly. It's beautiful. She had never seen anything quite like it. The rain had left without making a sound. In its place remained only freshness, peace, and quiet beauty. A colorful rainbow slowly appeared above the distant hills. Its gentle arch stretched across the brightening sky. The rabbits emerged from beneath the roots. The birds sang once again. The butterflies opened their delicate wings and returned to the wild flowers. The forest breathed deeply, refreshed by the gentle rain. Emma stood beneath the ancient magic tree and looked around the clearing one last time. She realized something important. Even rainy days could become beautiful memories. Sometimes, the quietest mornings carried the greatest gifts. She placed her hand gently against the warm bark. "Thank you for keeping everyone safe," she whispered. The breeze answered with its familiar whisper through the leaves. The ancient magic tree stood silently beneath the brightening sky, strong, patient, kind, just as it had through every gentle rain for 200 peaceful years. And somewhere deep within its countless rings of wood, another beautiful memory quietly found its place. Chapter 12. The autumn leaves of memory. Summer slowly gave way to autumn. It happened so gently that no one could point to the exact day when the season changed. The mornings became cooler. The evenings arrived a little earlier. The warm breeze that had danced through the forest all summer now carried the crisp, comforting scent of fallen leaves. The magic tree welcomed the new season, just as it had welcomed every season for the past 200 years. Its emerald leaves slowly transformed into brilliant shades of gold, amber, copper, and crimson. Each sunrise painted the forest with richer colors than the day before. Visitors often stopped in silent amazement. Some whispered that the forest looked like a living painting. Others simply smiled, unable to find words beautiful enough to describe what they were seeing. Emma continued visiting the ancient tree whenever she could. Oliver returned from time to time as well. They often arrived on different days. Sometimes their paths crossed. Sometimes they simply left small gifts for one another beneath the old wooden bench. A carefully pressed flower inside a journal, a smooth stone from the nearby stream, a handwritten note that read, "May your heart always find its way back to peace." Neither expected anything in return. Kindness had become its own reward. One quiet afternoon, the forest welcomed a gentle wind from the north. The breeze moved slowly through the colorful branches. One by one, golden leaves began to drift toward the earth. They floated gracefully, never in a hurry. Each leaf turned slowly in the sunlight, as though enjoying every moment of its gentle journey. Emma stood beneath the great tree with her face turned toward the sky. She stretched out both hands. A single golden leaf landed softly in her palm. She smiled. "It chose me." Nearby, Oliver watched quietly. "Or perhaps," he said with a warm smile, "you chose to notice it." Emma laughed. "I like that answer." Together they watched hundreds of leaves dance through the autumn air. The forest floor slowly became a blanket of gold. Walking across it sounded like the soft turning of pages in an old storybook. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The peaceful sound echoed gently beneath every careful step. Oliver looked toward the ancient trunk. "Imagine everything this tree has witnessed." Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. "Do you think it remembers every autumn?" "I believe it does." "And every visitor?" Oliver smiled. "I think the people who find this tree become part of its story." Emma rested her hand against the bark. "If that's true, then I'm very happy to be one of its stories." The afternoon passed quietly. Neither of them felt the need to fill every moment with conversation. Sometimes they simply watched squirrels gather acorns. Sometimes they listened to birds preparing for the coming winter. Sometimes they closed their eyes and enjoyed the whispering leaves above. As the sun began its slow descent, the forest glowed with warm amber light. The entire clearing shimmered as though every leaf had captured a tiny piece of the sunset. Oliver opened his journal. The golden leaf still rested safely between its pages. Beside it were the mysterious words that had appeared months before. "Return whenever your heart grows tired." He smiled. His heart no longer felt tired, but he knew he would always return. Not because he needed to escape the world, but because this place reminded him how beautiful the world truly was. Emma picked up one colorful leaf and carefully placed it inside her own notebook. "So I'll always remember today," she whispered. The breeze carried another gentle whisper through the branches. A peaceful goodbye, or perhaps a promise that every ending quietly becomes another beginning. The sun slipped below the distant hills. Golden light faded into soft shades of violet and blue. One by one, the first stars appeared above the ancient forest. The magic tree stood quietly beneath the evening sky, watching another season unfold, adding another beautiful autumn to the countless memories held within its heartwood. And somewhere among its highest branches, a single golden leaf remained untouched, waiting patiently, as though it already knew. Another traveler would someday need to find their way home. Chapter 13. The first snow of winter. Autumn slowly whispered its final farewell. The brilliant shades of gold and crimson faded gently from the forest, and the days grew shorter with each passing week. A cool wind arrived from the northern hills, carrying the quiet promise of winter. One peaceful evening, the sky became soft and gray. The birds tucked themselves safely into their nests. The squirrels settled deep inside the hollows of ancient trees. Even the little stream flowed more slowly, its gentle song becoming softer beneath the growing cold. The magic tree stood peacefully at the center of the forest. Its mighty branches stretched toward the quiet sky, waiting patiently, just as they had waited through 200 winters before. As night settled over the woodland, something wonderful happened. The very first snowflake began to fall. It drifted silently through the air, slowly, gracefully, without a sound. Then another followed, and another. Within moments, thousands of delicate snowflakes floated gently from the sky, covering the forest in a blanket of pure white. By morning, everything had changed. The paths were hidden beneath fresh snow. The little stream wore tiny edges of sparkling ice. The wildflowers rested peacefully beneath their warm winter blanket. The magic tree looked more magnificent than ever. Its great branches held layers of fresh snow that glittered in the early sunlight like fine crystal. Emma arrived just after sunrise, wrapped in a thick wool coat, a knitted scarf, and warm mittens. Her boots made soft, crunching sounds as she walked through the snow. Crunch, crunch, crunch. She smiled with every step. Winter had always been her favorite season. When she reached the clearing, she stopped in amazement. The ancient tree looked almost magical beneath its snowy crown. "It looks like a giant sleeping peacefully," she whispered. The breeze moved gently through the branches. Tiny flakes drifted softly to the ground. Emma laughed quietly as a few landed on her mitten. Nearby, she noticed something moving beneath the snow. A small brown rabbit carefully poked its head out from beneath the roots of the magic tree. Its tiny nose twitched as it looked around. Emma remained perfectly still. She didn't want to frighten her little neighbor. After a moment, the rabbit hopped toward a patch of dried grass that still peeked through the snow. Emma smiled. "Breakfast time," she whispered. The forest was quieter in winter, not empty, simply resting. Every sound seemed softer, every movement slower. It felt as though the entire woodland had wrapped itself in a warm blanket for a peaceful sleep. Later that afternoon, Oliver returned to the forest once again. He carried a small basket filled with bird seed. Without saying a word, he scattered a few handfuls beneath the lower branches of the magic tree. Within minutes, colorful birds fluttered down from above. Robins, finches, bluebirds. Even a shy little chickadee joined the gathering. Oliver and Emma stood together, watching quietly. Neither wished to interrupt the peaceful meal. "It's nice to help them through the winter," Emma said softly. Oliver nodded. "The tree has cared for everyone for 200 years. He smiled. "Perhaps today we can help care for its guests." Emma liked that thought very much. Together they refilled a tiny wooden bird feeder hanging from one of the lower branches. Then they brushed fresh snow from the little stone path surrounding the wildflowers, even though the flowers slept safely beneath the earth until spring. "It's still their garden," Emma said with a gentle smile. "They'll be back." Oliver looked toward the ancient tree. "So will we." The afternoon slowly faded into evening. The western sky turned shades of soft pink, lavender, and silver. Snowflakes began falling once again, lighter than before. They floated silently around the ancient tree, glowing beneath the first evening stars. Emma looked upward. "Do you think the tree likes winter?" Oliver smiled. "I think it loves every season. Spring brings new beginnings. Summer brings long, peaceful days. Autumn brings beautiful memories. And winter—" He paused, looking at the quiet forest around them. "Winter reminds us that rest is part of life, too." Emma thought about those words as they stood together beneath the snowy branches. Nothing in the forest hurried toward spring. Nothing worried about tomorrow. Everything trusted the seasons. Everything trusted time. Before leaving, Emma placed a tiny pine cone at the foot of the magic tree. "A little winter gift," she whispered. The breeze gently stirred the snow-covered branches above. A few sparkling flakes drifted softly around her. She smiled. Somehow, it felt like the old tree was saying, "Thank you." As night gently settled across the sleeping forest, the magic tree stood quietly beneath the falling snow, watching over every bird, every rabbit, every traveler, just as it had done through 200 peaceful winters. And deep within its ancient heart, another quiet season became another cherished memory. Chapter 14. The Tree's Greatest Gift. Winter slowly loosened its gentle embrace. The days became a little longer. The mornings felt a little warmer. Tiny drops of melting snow slipped quietly from the branches of the ancient magic tree, falling softly onto the earth below. The forest was waking once again, not suddenly, not all at once, but little by little. The first green shoots pushed gently through the soil. Tiny white snowdrops appeared beside the old stone path Emma had carefully built many months before. The little stream laughed a little louder each morning as the last pieces of ice disappeared into its clear, flowing water. Spring had returned, just as it always had, just as it always would. The magic tree welcomed the season with quiet joy. Small green buds appeared upon its branches. Within days they unfolded into fresh leaves that shimmered in the gentle morning sunlight. Birds returned from distant lands. Their cheerful songs filled the forest from dawn until dusk. Squirrels hurried happily among the branches. Butterflies danced through the wildflowers that had awakened beneath the warm sunshine. Everything felt new, yet wonderfully familiar. One bright morning, Oliver returned once again to the clearing. His footsteps were slow and peaceful. He no longer traveled in search of something missing. Instead, he traveled simply because he enjoyed the journey. When he reached the magic tree, he smiled warmly. "It's good to see you again, old friend," he whispered. The breeze answered with its familiar rustling song. A few moments later, Emma arrived carrying a small watering can. She carefully watered the young flowers growing around the ancient roots. The blossoms nodded gently beneath the fresh drops of water. Oliver watched with quiet admiration. "You've cared for this place beautifully." Emma smiled. "I think the forest has been caring for me, too." Oliver nodded. "I believe you're right." The morning passed peacefully. They talked very little. Instead, they listened to the robins building their nests, to the bees humming softly among the flowers, to the stream singing its endless melody. Everything seemed perfectly balanced. As the afternoon sunlight filtered through the leaves, something unusual happened. A gentle gust of wind moved through the highest branches. Hundreds of tiny blossoms drifted down together, white, soft, delicate. They floated around Oliver and Emma like silent snowflakes made of flowers. Neither of them spoke. The moment felt too beautiful for words. One blossom landed gently upon Emma's shoulder. Another rested inside Oliver's open journal. The golden leaf that had traveled with him for so long lay beside it. Two simple gifts, one from autumn, one from spring. Oliver smiled quietly. "The tree has given us many things." Emma looked around the peaceful clearing. "It gave us friendship. It taught us patience. It reminded us to notice beautiful things." Oliver closed his journal carefully. "And perhaps it gave us something even greater." Emma looked at him curiously. "What?" He took a slow, peaceful breath. "It reminded us that happiness isn't something we find far away. It's something we create by slowing down enough to notice what has always been around us." Emma thought about those words for a long time. She looked toward the tiny birds singing in the branches, the butterflies floating above the flowers, the sunlight dancing across the stream, the gentle wind moving through the leaves. Then she smiled. "I think that's the greatest gift anyone could receive." The afternoon slowly turned into evening. Golden light wrapped the entire forest in warmth. Every leaf seemed to glow. Every flower shone with quiet beauty. The magic tree stood peacefully above them all, silent, patient, kind, just as it had been for 200 wonderful years. And though it had never spoken a single word aloud, its greatest lesson had quietly reached every heart that had rested beneath its branches. Sometimes, the greatest magic in life is simply learning how to be fully present, to breathe deeply, to walk slowly, to love generously, and to treasure each peaceful moment before it gently becomes a memory. As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Oliver and Emma remained beneath the ancient tree for just a little while longer. Neither wished to hurry home, because they had learned something the old magic tree had known for centuries. Peace is never found by rushing. It is found by quietly arriving, exactly where you are. Chapter 15. The Old Gardener's Visit. A few peaceful weeks passed and spring settled gently over the forest. The mornings became warmer. Wildflowers bloomed beside every winding path. The little stream reflected the bright blue sky like polished glass. The magic tree stood proudly at the center of the woodland, its fresh green leaves dancing softly whenever the breeze wandered through the forest. Each new day brought another quiet visitor. Some stayed for only a few peaceful moments. Others remained until the stars appeared. Yet everyone left carrying the same invisible gift, a lighter heart. One beautiful morning, a new traveler arrived. He was an elderly gardener named Thomas. His silver hair rested beneath a wide straw hat, and his hands were rough from many decades of planting flowers, tending vegetables, and caring for fruit trees. Across his shoulder hung a simple canvas bag. Inside were only a few gardening tools, a small notebook, and several tiny cloth pouches filled with seeds. Thomas had spent nearly 60 years growing beautiful gardens in villages across the countryside. People admired his flowers. Children loved walking through his colorful gardens. But Thomas always smiled and said, "I don't grow flowers. I simply help them become what they were always meant to be." That morning he had set out with no destination in mind. He simply followed the quiet country roads, greeting every bird, every butterfly, and every old tree along the way. After many peaceful hours of walking, he noticed something unusual. A gentle breeze carried the sweet fragrance of blossoms unlike any he had ever smelled. It was soft, fresh, comforting, almost as though the wind itself was inviting him forward. Thomas smiled. "I suppose someone wishes me to keep walking." And so he did. The narrow woodland path welcomed him beneath cool green branches. Sunlight filtered gently through the leaves, creating golden patterns that slowly shifted across the moss-covered ground. The forest felt wonderfully alive, yet perfectly peaceful. Robins sang cheerful melodies from nearby branches. A family of deer wandered quietly through a distant meadow. Butterflies floated above fields of tiny white flowers. Everywhere Thomas looked, nature seemed perfectly balanced. Then he saw it, the ancient magic tree. He stopped without taking another step. His eyes widened with quiet amazement. For many years he had cared for thousands of trees. Young trees, old trees, apple trees, cherry trees, ancient oaks. But never had he seen anything like this. Slowly removing his hat, Thomas bowed his head ever so slightly. "What a magnificent old friend," he whispered. He walked closer with slow, respectful steps. Instead of immediately touching the trunk, he simply stood nearby, looking upward, admiring every branch, every leaf, every tiny bird's nest hidden among the green canopy. Only after several quiet minutes did he gently place one weathered hand against the bark. The tree felt warm, strong, peaceful. Thomas smiled. "I've spent my whole life caring for trees, but today it feels as though one is caring for me." The breeze moved gently through the branches above. Thousands of leaves answered with their familiar whisper. Thomas closed his eyes. He listened carefully, not for words, but for feeling. The forest seemed to breathe together. The birds, the flowers, the stream, the wind. Even the old gardener found himself breathing more slowly without realizing it. He opened his notebook. Most of its pages contained drawings of gardens from many different villages. Rose gardens, herb gardens, little vegetable patches beside tiny cottages. On the next empty page, he carefully wrote, Today I met the wisest tree I have ever known." He paused for a moment before writing one final sentence. Its greatest lesson was silence. Thomas gently closed the notebook. He smiled toward the branches overhead. "I'll remember that." A nearby robin landed only a few feet away. It tilted its tiny head as though studying the visitor. Thomas reached into his pocket and scattered a few seeds onto the soft grass. The robin hopped closer. Soon another bird joined, then another. Before long, the clearing was filled with gentle birds enjoying a peaceful meal together. Thomas watched with quiet happiness. There is always enough when we choose to share. The afternoon drifted by like a slow-moving cloud. He carefully removed a few fallen twigs from the little flower garden Emma had created months earlier. He straightened several small stones along the winding path. He pulled a single tiny weed growing beside the wildflowers. Nothing more. He believed nature needed very little help. Only kindness, only patience. As the sun began to sink toward the western hills, golden light filled the clearing once again. Thomas gathered his bag and prepared to leave. Before taking his first step, he reached inside one of the small cloth pouches. It contained a handful of tiny acorns. He gently buried one beneath the rich soil a short distance from the magic tree. Not too close, not too far. Just enough space for another tree to grow one day. He covered it carefully with soft earth. Then he smiled. Every great tree was once a tiny seed. The future begins quietly. The evening breeze whispers softly through the ancient branches. A single green leaf drifted gently to the ground beside the newly planted acorn. Thomas noticed it. He smiled once more. "I'll take that as a blessing." With slow, peaceful steps, the old gardener disappeared along the winding forest path. Behind him, the magic tree stood quietly beneath the golden evening sky, watching over the tiny acorn resting beneath the earth. Perhaps, just perhaps, another beautiful story had already begun. Chapter 16. The Secret of the Crystal Stream. Part 1. Take a slow, comfortable breath. Allow your shoulders to soften. Let the weight of the day slowly drift away. As our story continues, imagine yourself walking along a quiet woodland path just as the first light of morning begins to awaken the world. There is no hurry. There is nowhere else you need to be. Only this peaceful forest. Only this gentle moment, and the quiet song of the crystal stream. The forest welcomed another beautiful morning with its familiar kindness. Long before the nearby villages opened their windows, long before the first baker lit the ovens, long before travelers packed their bags for another day's journey. The forest was already awake, not with noise, but with gentle life. A cool mist floated between the ancient trees, moving so slowly that it almost seemed to be dreaming. Tiny droplets rested upon every blade of grass. Spiderwebs stretched between small branches, each one decorated with sparkling beads of morning dew. The rising sun had not yet climbed above the distant hills. Instead, soft silver light filled the woodland. It was the kind of light that invited every living thing to wake, slowly, patiently, peacefully. At the center of the forest, the 200-year-old magic tree stood exactly where it had always stood. Its enormous branches stretched toward the brightening sky. Its roots rested deep beneath the earth, embracing stones that had remained untouched for centuries. Every morning began the same way. The robins arrived first, then the bluebirds. A family of tiny wrens followed shortly afterward. High above, squirrels emerged from hidden nests tucked safely inside old branches. Each creature greeted the new day in its own gentle way. Nothing competed, nothing hurried. Everything simply belonged. Beside the ancient tree flowed the crystal stream. Its waters had traveled through this forest for longer than anyone could remember. Some said the stream was even older than the magic tree itself. Others believed they'd been born together on the very same spring morning 2 centuries earlier. No one truly knew, and perhaps no one needed to know. Some mysteries were happiest when they remained mysteries. The stream moved quietly over smooth stones polished by countless years. The water never argued with the rocks. It simply flowed around them, patiently, gracefully, without complaint. The sunlight finally reached the tops of the tallest trees. Golden beams slipped gently between thousands of green leaves. One by one, tiny diamonds appeared across the surface of the crystal stream. Each ripple caught the light. Each ripple reflected another tiny piece of the waking sky. It looked as though hundreds of little stars had quietly settled upon the water. A dragonfly hovered above the stream. Its delicate wings shimmered with shades of blue and emerald. For several peaceful moments it remained perfectly still. Then it glided silently across the water before disappearing into the morning light. Nearby, a family of ducks floated lazily downstream. The mother duck led the way while 6 tiny ducklings followed closely behind. Each little duck created a gentle ripple. Together, they painted peaceful circles upon the glass-like surface of the stream. Hidden beneath the clear water, colorful fish moved gracefully between smooth stones. They never seemed hurried. They simply explored the underwater world one quiet moment at a time. Sometimes they paused beneath patches of floating sunlight. Sometimes they disappeared beneath the gentle shadows cast by overhanging branches. Their world moved as slowly as the forest itself. The magic tree watched everything. It had watched thousands of mornings just like this one. It had watched young saplings grow into towering trees. It had watched little birds hatch, learn to fly, and one day return with families of their own. It had watched children become grandparents, and still, every sunrise felt new. Perhaps that was the tree's greatest secret. It never grew tired of simple beauty. The sound of birds singing, the sparkle of fresh water, the warmth of early sunlight, the fragrance of blooming flowers. These ordinary miracles remained extraordinary because the tree noticed every one of them. Far beyond the forest, many people had already begun rushing through another busy morning. Doors opened quickly, footsteps echoed through crowded streets, wagons rolled along dusty roads, voices called from market stalls. Everyone hurried toward tomorrow before fully noticing today. But here, inside this peaceful woodland, time followed different rules. No clock hurried the flowers, no calendar rushed the seasons, no bell interrupted the quiet conversation between the wind and the leaves. The crystal stream continued its endless journey, never worrying about how far it still had to travel. It simply enjoyed each gentle curve, each smooth stone, each reflection of the brightening sky. If someone had asked the little stream where it was going, perhaps it would have answered, "I am simply flowing." And perhaps that was enough. A soft breeze wandered through the clearing. The branches of the magic tree swayed gently from side to side. Thousands of leaves answered together with their familiar whisper. It sounded like a peaceful lullaby that had been sung every morning for 200 years. The birds seemed to pause for just a moment. Even the stream appeared to slow its gentle song. The forest breathed together, one peaceful breath, one peaceful morning, one more beautiful beginning. And somewhere beyond the winding woodland path, a familiar traveler had just begun walking toward the crystal stream once again, carrying not a heavy burden, but a peaceful heart ready to discover another quiet lesson hidden within the ancient forest. Chapter 17. The Summer Festival, Beneath the Tree. Summer returned to the forest like a gentle song, not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, as if the world itself was remembering warmth again. The snow had long melted into the earth. The wildflowers had returned in soft waves of color. Bees moved lazily from bloom to bloom, carrying the quiet energy of long sunny days. And the crystal stream sparkled brighter than ever, reflecting a sky so blue it seemed endless. The magic tree stood at the center of it all, unchanged and patient, as if every season were simply another familiar breath in its long life. For 200 years, it had watched summers come and go. But this summer felt a little different. There was something new in the air, something peaceful, something alive with quiet celebration. Emma noticed it first. One early morning, while walking along the stone path near the wildflower garden, she heard soft music drifting through the trees. At first she thought it was the wind playing tricks with the leaves, but then she heard it again, a gentle rhythm, like tapping wood, like humming voices carried through the forest. She followed the sound slowly, curiosity guiding her steps. The deeper she walked, the more the forest seemed to welcome her. Birds chirped in soft harmony above her head. Butterflies danced in looping patterns as if they were part of an invisible celebration. Even the sunlight felt warmer, falling through the leaves in golden waves. When Emma finally reached the clearing, she stopped in surprise. The entire forest near the magic tree had changed. Not in a strange way, but in a beautiful, festive way. Colorful ribbons made from natural vines hung gently between branches. Wildflowers had been carefully arranged in soft circles around the base of the ancient tree. Small lanterns made from hollowed gourds glowed with warm, golden light, even though it was still daytime. And there, beneath the great branches, the animals of the forest were gathered. Deer stood quietly near the edges. Rabbits sat in small groups, their ears twitching with curiosity. Birds filled the branches above like a living crown of feathers and song. Even the little stream seemed to move a little more joyfully, reflecting flickers of light from the decorations above. Emma whispered softly, "What is happening here?" A familiar voice answered her. "It is not a festival of humans," Oliver said gently as he stepped beside her. "It is a festival of the forest." Emma turned toward him. "A festival?" Oliver nodded. "Every summer, when the days are longest and the nights are warmest, the forest remembers joy." Emma looked around in wonder. "But who organizes it?" Oliver smiled. "No one. It simply happens, as if the forest itself decides it is time to celebrate being alive." Emma thought about this carefully. The idea felt strange, but also completely natural here. Nothing in this forest ever felt forced. Everything simply was. A soft breeze moved through the branches above them. The leaves rustled like quiet applause. Then something even more magical happened. The animals began to move, slowly at first. Carefully, a group of deer stepped into the open clearing and circled the magic tree once. Birds began singing louder, but still gentle. like music meant only for the forest to hear. Squirrels leapt from branch to branch in playful rhythm. Even the rabbits hopped in soft patterns across the moss-covered ground. Emma laughed quietly. "It feels like the whole forest is dancing." Oliver nodded, not dancing to impress anyone. Just expressing happiness. As the sun reached its highest point in the sky, the festival grew warmer and brighter. The wildflowers seemed to glow with color. The crystal stream reflected every movement like liquid light. Emma noticed small details everywhere. A butterfly resting on a deer's antler, a bird gently landing near a rabbit without fear. Even the wind seemed softer, as if it did not want to disturb the celebration. She walked slowly toward the magic tree. Its bark felt warm under her hand, stronger than ever, calmer than ever. And as she stood there, she felt something deep inside her chest, a quiet happiness, not excitement, not laughter, but something softer, like peace wearing a smile. Later that afternoon, Oliver placed a small wooden flute on the grass. Emma looked at it. "Do you play?" Oliver shook his head gently. "No, but sometimes I think the forest plays for us." He picked it up and held it for a moment, then placed it back down, as if respecting the silence more than the sound. Emma sat beside the roots of the magic tree. "I think I understand this place now," she said. Oliver sat beside her. "What do you understand?" She looked around. The forest doesn't celebrate because something special happens. It celebrates because everything is already special. Oliver smiled softly. "Yes, that is exactly it." As evening slowly approached, golden light spread across the forest. The festival did not end suddenly. It simply softened, like a song fading into silence. The animals returned quietly to their resting places. The ribbons swayed gently in the wind. The lanterns dimmed one by one, leaving only the natural glow of sunset. Emma leaned against the magic tree. "I wish I could stay here forever." Oliver looked at her calmly. "You already do." Emma looked confused. "What do you mean?" Oliver pointed gently toward the forest. "This place doesn't leave you. Once you truly feel it, it stays with you." Emma thought about that, and slowly she smiled, because she realized it was true. The sky turned soft orange, then pink, then deep blue. The first stars appeared above the ancient branches, and the magic tree stood quietly once again, not as a place of festival, but as a place of memory, a place where joy did not end. It simply rested, waiting for the next moment to begin again. Chapter 18. The lost musician night had not yet fully arrived, but the forest was already beginning to soften into evening. The golden light of sunset slowly faded through the trees, leaving behind long shadows and a deep, peaceful blue sky. The sounds of the summer festival had already quieted. The animals had returned to their resting places. The ribbons swayed gently in the cooling breeze, and the lanterns no longer glowed. Yet the feeling of celebration still lingered in the air, like a memory the forest did not want to let go of too quickly. The magic tree stood silently at the center of it all, as if listening, as if waiting, and as if it already knew someone new was on their way. Far outside the forest, along a quiet country road, a man walked slowly with a worn leather case in his hand. He looked tired, not just in his body, but in something deeper, something unseen. His name was Daniel. Once, many years ago, Daniel had been known as a musician. His violin had filled concert halls in cities far away. People used to say his music could make even the coldest hearts feel warm. But that was a long time ago. Now he no longer played. The violin remained inside its case, untouched for months, maybe even years. Daniel didn't remember the exact day he stopped playing. Only the feeling, the silence that followed. He had tried many times to begin again, but every time he lifted the violin, nothing felt right. The music inside him had gone quiet, so he walked, without destination, without expectation, just walking. That evening, something unusual happened. As Daniel crossed a narrow wooden bridge, he heard something faint in the wind. A sound, like music, very soft, almost impossible to notice. He stopped, listened carefully. Nothing, only silence. He shook his head slightly. "Just my imagination," he whispered. But when he started walking again, the sound returned. This time clearer, like a distant melody carried through the trees. Daniel looked toward the direction of the forest. Something about it felt familiar, as if it was calling him without words. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he changed direction. The deeper he walked into the forest, the quieter the world became. Not empty quiet, but peaceful quiet. The kind of silence that feels alive. Birds did not fly away when he passed. Instead, they watched him calmly. The wind did not push him back. It guided him forward. Even the ground beneath his feet felt softer, as if it wanted him to continue. And then he saw it, the magic tree. Daniel stopped completely. For a long moment he did not move. He had seen many beautiful places in his life, but nothing like this. The tree felt older than time itself. Its branches stretched wide like open arms. The air around it felt different, warmer, calmer. He slowly stepped forward, each step heavier than the last. Not because of fear, but because of memory. Something inside him stirred, something he had not felt in a very long time. Emma was the first to notice him. She stood near the edge of the clearing and quietly observed. Oliver was beside her. "Another traveler," she whispered. Oliver nodded. "But this one feels different." Daniel slowly approached the tree. Then he stopped a few steps away. He looked at the trunk, at the roots, at the quiet stream flowing nearby. And then his eyes fell to the grass. He opened the violin case, very slowly, as if afraid of what he might find inside. The instrument was still beautiful, but it looked forgotten, like it had been waiting for him longer than he had been waiting for himself. Daniel sat down beneath the magic tree. For a long time, he said nothing, did nothing, just held the violin in his hands. Emma and Oliver did not interrupt. They simply watched from a distance. The forest itself also seemed to stay still. Even the wind became quieter, as if the entire world was waiting. Finally, Daniel lifted the violin, rested it on his shoulder, and placed the bow gently on the strings. The first sound that came out was broken, soft, uncertain. Not music, just a memory of music. Daniel stopped, closed his eyes, took a slow breath. The forest remained silent. He tried again. This time the sound was steadier, still imperfect, but alive. A single note drifted into the air, then another. Slowly, carefully, the melody began to form. It was not a performance. It was not practiced. It was something else, something honest, something returning. As Daniel played, something incredible happened. The forest began to respond, not loudly, not dramatically, but gently. The leaves swayed in rhythm. The stream seemed to flow a little more smoothly. Even the birds returned to listen. Emma felt something warm in her chest. "He's remembering," she whispered. Oliver nodded. "Not the music, He's remembering himself. Daniel's eyes remained closed. Tears formed quietly, but he did not stop playing. For the first time in years, he was not trying to be perfect. He was simply allowing the music to exist. The melody slowly grew softer, slower, deeper, like a lullaby for a tired heart. The magic tree stood above him like a silent guardian, holding the moment still, protecting it, honoring it. When Daniel finally lowered the violin, the forest remained quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now, not empty, full. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I thought I lost it," he whispered. Oliver stepped forward slightly. "You didn't lose it," he said gently. "You just stopped listening for it." Daniel looked down at his hands, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Emma walked a little closer. "Will you play again?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her, then at the tree, then at the sky above the branches. "I think," he said slowly, "I already have." And in that moment, the forest understood. Sometimes the greatest music is not what we hear, but what we remember inside ourselves and beneath the ancient magic tree. Another forgotten song quietly returned to life. Chapter 19. The Owl, who remembered every season night, had fully settled over the forest. The sky above the magic tree was deep and endless, filled with countless stars that shimmered like distant lanterns. The air was cool, but not cold. It carried the gentle scent of leaves, earth, and the last warmth of the day slowly fading into silence. After Daniel's music had ended, the forest did not return to its previous state of silence. Instead, something new remained, a quiet echo, not of sound, but of feeling, as if the melody had stayed behind in the trees, in the wind, in the water, and in every heart that had listened. Emma sat near the roots of the magic tree, hugging her knees gently. Oliver stood a little distance away, looking up at the branches. Daniel had already left the clearing, walking slowly back along the path he came from. But none of them truly felt like he was gone. Some people, Emma thought, never really leave a place. They simply become part of its memory. The forest felt like that now, like it had learned something new, something soft, something human. A faint sound broke the stillness, not music, not wind, something else. A slow, rhythmic hoot echoed through the trees. "Ooh, hoo, ooh, hoo." Emma looked up. "An owl," she whispered. Oliver nodded quietly. But not just any owl. From the highest branch of the magic tree, a large owl slowly descended. Its wings moved without noise, as if the air itself made space for it. It landed gracefully on a lower branch near the clearing. Its feathers were soft shades of brown, gray, and faint silver. But what made it unusual were its eyes, deep, calm, and strangely aware. It did not look at them as if seeing strangers. It looked as if it recognized them, as if it had been watching for a very long time. The owl tilted its head slightly, then spoke. Not in words exactly, but in feeling that somehow became understood. Emma blinked softly. Did it just... Oliver nodded. "It remembers." Emma frowned slightly. "Remembers what?" Oliver looked at the owl. "Everything." The owl closed its eyes slowly, and in that moment, the forest seemed to change. The wind shifted, the air softened, and suddenly Emma felt something strange. Images, not dreams, not visions, but impressions. Spring rain falling over the magic tree, summer festivals glowing in golden light, autumn leaves drifting like memories, winter snow resting quietly on silent branches. She gasped softly. "I can see it." Oliver nodded again. "It shows what it has seen." The owl opened its eyes once more, and the feeling faded gently, like ripples disappearing on water. Emma looked amazed. "How long has it lived here?" she whispered. Oliver smiled faintly. "Long enough to forget what it means to count time." The owl blinked slowly, as if agreeing. Emma stepped a little closer. "Do you really remember every season?" The owl turned its head toward her, and for a moment, the forest grew still. Even the stream seemed to pause its song. Then, another feeling arrived, this time softer, warmer, more emotional. Emma felt it clearly. A memory of countless nights beneath the stars, of storms passing without fear, of travelers resting under the magic tree, of laughter, of silence, of everything in between. Her eyes widened. "It really does," she whispered. Oliver sat down beside Emma. "Some creatures don't measure life by years," he said gently. "They measure it by what they witness." Emma looked at the owl. "So it has seen everything?" Oliver nodded. "Yes, and it never forgot." The owl slowly spread its wings, not to fly away, but as if stretching through memory itself. A soft breeze moved through the branches of the magic tree, and for a brief moment, the forest felt like it was breathing with the owl. Emma closed her eyes, and again faint impressions returned. A child laughing under spring blossoms, a traveler resting after a long journey, a gardener planting seeds near the roots of the tree, a musician playing a forgotten melody. All of it, connected, all of it, remembered. When Emma opened her eyes again, the owl was still there, watching quietly, patiently. Oliver stood up slowly. "I think," he said softly, "it doesn't just remember the past. It keeps it safe." Emma looked thoughtful. "Like a guardian." Oliver nodded. "Like a witness." The owl gave one final soft hoot. "Ooh, ooh," and then it turned its gaze toward the magic tree, as if acknowledging something older than even itself. The branches above rustled gently. A few leaves drifted down, landing silently on the forest floor. Emma smiled. "It feels like the tree and the owl understand each other." Oliver replied quietly. "They have been talking for a very long time." The night deepened. Stars shimmered brighter above the clearing. One by one, the forest began to settle into sleep again. But this time, the silence was not empty. It was full of memory, full of stories that did not need to be spoken aloud. The owl remained on its branch, watching over everything. The magic tree stood beneath it, timeless and calm, and beneath the tree, Emma and Oliver sat quietly, knowing that even when nothing seemed to happen, the forest was always remembering. Chapter 20. The Child Who Planted an Acorn. Morning arrived softly, like a breath taken after a long, peaceful dream. The forest was still wrapped in the gentle silence of night, but the first light of dawn was already touching the edges of the trees. A thin, golden glow spread slowly across the leaves of the magic tree. Birds began to stir one by one, not in a rush, but as if waking up from a very long, comfortable sleep. The crystal stream shimmered faintly, reflecting the soft colors of the early sky. And somewhere deep within the forest, life quietly continued its endless, patient rhythm. That morning, a small child entered the forest alone. His name was Noah. He was younger than Emma, smaller than most travelers who dared to walk this far into the woods. But his steps were steady, not afraid, just curious. Noah carried something carefully in both hands, a single acorn, smooth, brown, perfectly ordinary. Yet to him, it felt important. He did not know why. He only knew that he had found it near his home, under an old oak tree that had stood there longer than anyone could remember. Something about it had made him stop. Something about it had made him think, "This should not stay in my pocket." So he had walked, and walked, until the forest appeared before him like a quiet invitation. The deeper Noah went, the more the forest seemed to notice him, not in a frightening way, but in a gentle way, as if the trees were saying, "We see you." The wind moved softly around him, never pushing him away. Birds watched him from above but did not fly off. Even the sunlight seemed to guide his path, slipping through the branches in small golden patches along the forest floor. Noah followed these patches without thinking, step by step, until he reached the clearing. The magic tree stood before him, huge, calm, unmoving, yet somehow alive in a way he had never seen before. Noah stopped. His eyes widened slightly. He had seen large trees before, but this one felt different, not just big, not just old, but aware, as if it knew he had arrived. Emma was the first to notice him. She stood quietly near the edge of the clearing and tilted her head. "Another child," she whispered. Oliver, sitting nearby, nodded. "But this one feels very young." Emma smiled softly. "Or very brave." Noah stepped closer, slowly, carefully. His eyes never left the trunk of the magic tree. He walked until he was standing just a few steps away. Then he stopped again. He looked down at the acorn in his hands. He held it tighter for a moment, as if making a decision. Oliver watched quietly. Emma did not move. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind became still. Noah knelt down and gently pressed the acorn into the soft soil near the roots of the magic tree. He used both hands to cover it carefully, patting the earth, smoothing it gently, like he was putting something precious to sleep. When he finished, he sat back on his heels and waited. Emma stepped closer. "What are you doing?" she asked softly. Noah looked up at her. "I'm helping it grow." Emma smiled. "But it will take a long time." Noah nodded. "I know." Oliver looked at the ground where the acorn rested. "Why here?" he asked gently. Noah thought for a moment, then answered simply, "Because it feels safe here." Those words hung in the air for a moment. Safe. The forest seemed to respond. A soft breeze moved through the branches of the magic tree. A few leaves drifted down slowly, landing near the freshly covered soil. Emma looked at Oliver. He gave a small, knowing smile. Noah stood up and brushed the soil from his hands. He looked up at the towering branches above him. "Will I see it grow?" he asked. Emma hesitated. Oliver answered gently, "Maybe not in the way you expect." Noah frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Oliver looked at the acorn in the ground. "Trees don't hurry. They become what they are, slowly." Noah seemed to think about this carefully. Then he nodded. "That's okay." He looked at the magic tree again. "Will this tree tell it to grow?" Emma laughed softly. "Noah, trees don't give instructions." He tilted his head. "Then what do they do?" Oliver answered. "They give time." The words felt simple, but something in them made Noah go quiet. He looked at the place where he had planted the acorn. Then he smiled, a small, peaceful smile, like someone who had just understood something important without needing it, explained fully. A bird landed nearby. Then another. The forest slowly returned to its gentle rhythm. The crystal stream continued its soft song. The magic tree stood above everything, unchanged. But now, something new rested beneath it. Not a tree yet, not even a sprout, Just a promise." Noah waved once. "I'll come back," he said. Emma nodded. "We'll be here." Oliver added softly, "And so will it." Noah turned and walked away along the forest path. His steps were lighter now, as if he'd left something behind, but also taken something with him, not in his hands, but in his heart. Emma watched him disappear between the trees, then whispered, "Do you think he'll remember it?" Oliver smiled. "He already does." The magic tree remained silent, but beneath its roots, the small acorn rested in the dark soil, surrounded by warmth, surrounded by time, surrounded by patience, and somewhere deep within the forest. The story quietly continued. Chapter 21. The longest night of winter. Winter arrived again, but this time it did not feel like a stranger. It felt like an old visitor returning quietly to a familiar home. The forest did not resist it. It simply welcomed the cold with the same calm acceptance it had shown for every season for 200 years. Snow began to fall slowly over the trees, covering branches, roots, and stones in a soft white blanket. The magic tree stood at the center of it all, patient as ever, its wide arms holding layers of snow like gentle memories resting on its shoulders. The crystal stream had slowed even further now, its surface partially frozen along the edges, still flowing in the center like a quiet heartbeat that refused to stop. The animals had changed their rhythm. The birds sang less. The squirrels moved deeper into hidden nests. Even the wind seemed to speak in softer tones. Everything had turned inward. Everything had become still. Emma arrived one quiet evening as the sky faded into deep blue. Her footsteps pressed softly into the snow. Crunch, crunch. Each step sounded louder than usual in the winter silence. She stopped at the edge of the clearing. The forest felt different tonight. Heavier, older, not in a frightening way, but in a deeply peaceful way, as if the entire woodland had closed its eyes to rest. Oliver was already there, standing beneath the magic tree. He looked up at the branches. Snow drifted slowly down like floating stars. "You came," Emma said softly. Oliver nodded. "It felt like I should." Emma looked around. "Everything is so quiet," Oliver replied gently. "It is listening." The wind moved slowly through the branches. A low, soft sound traveled through the forest. Not wind exactly, not silence either. Something in between. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. "It feels like the longest night of winter," she whispered. Oliver nodded. "It is." They sat together near the roots of the magic tree. No fire, no light. Only the faint glow of snow reflecting starlight above them. The world felt endless in every direction, yet somehow not lonely. Emma looked up. "Do you think the forest sleeps?" Oliver thought for a moment. "Not like we do. Maybe it just remembers quietly." Emma smiled. "I like that." Time passed slowly. Minutes blended into one another. The forest did not mark time with anything obvious. No bells, no clocks, only the gentle passing of wind, the soft settling of snow, the occasional crack of ice along the stream. Everything moved at the pace of breathing. Then something subtle changed. Emma noticed it first. A faint sound, very far away, like something moving beneath the snow. She looked at Oliver. "Did you hear that?" He nodded slightly. "Yes." The sound came again, not loud, not urgent, but steady, like something pushing upward from below the earth. Emma stood slowly. "What is it?" Oliver looked toward the base of the magic tree. "I think something is waking." They moved closer to the roots. The snow there looked slightly different, softer, looser, as if something underneath had gently disturbed it. Emma knelt down and brushed away a thin layer of snow with her hand. Oliver watched silently. Under the snow, something small had broken through the soil. A tiny green point, barely visible but real, alive. Emma froze, then whispered, "Oh." Oliver smiled softly. "It has been waiting." Emma looked closer. The tiny green shoot was fragile, almost invisible in the winter darkness, but it was there, reaching upward, carefully, patiently. Noah's acorn. Emma covered her mouth slightly. "It actually grew." Oliver nodded. "It never stopped growing. It just waited for the right time." A soft breeze moved through the branches above. Snow drifted gently down around them. Emma placed her hand carefully beside the tiny sprout. "So small," she whispered. Oliver replied, "Everything begins that way." The forest felt different now, not because of noise, but because of hope. Even in the deepest winter, even in the longest night, something had begun. Emma stood slowly. "I thought winter was just an ending," she said. Oliver shook his head. "It is also preparation." Emma looked around the silent forest. "So everything is waiting for spring." Oliver smiled. "Not waiting, trusting." The magic tree stood above them, covered in snow. But beneath its roots, a new life had begun. Not loud, not visible to most, but real. Emma looked up at the sky. Stars shimmered above the frozen branches. "I think this forest never truly sleeps," she said. Oliver nodded. "It dreams." The wind passed through once more, soft, long, endless, and somewhere deep within the forest. The longest night slowly began to change, without anyone noticing. Chapter 22. The morning after 200 years. The longest night did not end with a sound. It ended with light. Soft at first, almost unnoticeable. A faint silver glow at the edge of the horizon, slowly spreading behind the sleeping hills. The forest did not wake suddenly. It never did. Instead, it shifted gently from darkness into morning, as if time itself was breathing more deeply. Snow still covered every branch of the magic tree. The crystal stream still held patches of ice along its edges, and the entire forest remained wrapped in winter's quiet embrace. But something had changed. Something subtle. Something alive. Emma was already awake when the first light appeared. She had not slept deeply, not because she was restless, but because the forest felt too still to ignore. She sat near the roots of the magic tree, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. Oliver stood a few steps away, watching the horizon. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Then it happened. The first golden ray of sunlight touched the highest branches of the magic tree. Slowly, carefully, as if it knew it was touching something sacred. The snow began to shimmer, not melting yet, just glowing, like the forest had been quietly lit from within. Emma stood slowly. "Look," she whispered. Oliver nodded. "I see it." Across the forest, tiny changes began to appear. A drop of melted snow fell from a branch, then another, then another. The crystal stream stirred beneath its icy surface as if remembering movement. Birds that had stayed silent for weeks began to shift in their nests. Not singing yet, just preparing, waiting. Emma walked forward into the clearing. Her footsteps pressed softly into the snow. But something felt different beneath it. The ground was not as frozen as before, not as heavy. She knelt down near the tiny sprout that had emerged during the longest night. and she gasped softly. It had grown, just slightly, but unmistakably. A second tiny leaf had appeared beside the first, delicate, green, alive. Emma smiled. "It's really happening," she whispered. Oliver knelt beside her. It always was. A soft wind moved through the branches above them, and for the first time in many days, it did not feel like winter's wind. It felt like change, the kind of change that does not rush, the kind that arrives slowly, respectfully, as if asking permission to enter. Far across the forest, something else began to awaken. The birds, one by one. A soft chirp here, a gentle flutter there, then more, until the entire forest began to hum with returning life, not loudly, but steadily, like a song being remembered after a long silence. Emma looked upward. "Spring is coming early," she said. Oliver shook his head slightly. "No." He looked at the magic tree. "It is not early. It is exactly on time." The sun climbed higher, and the snow began to change, not disappearing all at once, but becoming lighter, softer, almost transparent in places, as if the forest was slowly revealing what had been hidden beneath it. The crystal stream broke through small patches of ice. A quiet trickle became a soft flowing sound again, like the forest exhaling after a long pause. Emma walked slowly toward the stream. She knelt beside it. The water was cold, clear, alive. She watched it carefully. "It never stopped moving," she said. Oliver nodded. "It never does." Emma smiled. "Even when everything looks frozen." Oliver finished her thought softly. "Something is still alive underneath." A sudden movement caught Emma's eye. A small bird landed near the stream, then another, then several more. They hesitated at first, then one dipped into the water, and another. Soon gentle splashes returned to the crystal stream. Life was coming back, not suddenly, but surely. Emma stood again. The forest felt different now, not changed completely, but transitioning, like a story turning to its next page. She looked at Oliver. "It feels like the world is remembering how to wake up." Oliver smiled. "It never forgot. It just waited." Behind them, the magic tree stood tall. Snow still clung to its branches, but sunlight now touched it from every angle, and for the first time in a long while, it did not feel like winter was holding the forest still. It felt like the forest was gently letting winter go. Emma placed her hand against the bark. "How long has it been here?" she asked quietly. Oliver answered after a pause. "Long enough for 200 winters." Emma looked up. "And it never gets tired?" Oliver shook his head. "It understands something most people forget." Emma tilted her head. "What?" Oliver looked at the rising sun. "That nothing beautiful is ever permanent. But everything beautiful returns." A long silence followed, peaceful, warm, natural. Then Emma spoke again. "Do you think Noah's tree will grow big like this one someday?" Oliver smiled softly. "If it is given time, it already has everything it needs." The forest continued to awaken around them. The sprout beneath the snow stood stronger now. The stream flowed freely again. The birds filled the air with returning songs, and above everything, the magic tree watched silently, as it always had, as it always would. Because in this forest, even after the longest night, the morning always remembered how to return,